Hi guys, it's Julian here, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to make hard rave techno style drums. We're going to be talking about that style, like, possession, our label group, like all that kind of stuff. I've been covering a lot recently, and today I wanted to make a video just talking about the drums. You guys actually requested this one. Now, to go along with this video, I've just dropped a new sample pack. It's called Definitive Hard Rave Techno Drum Loops Volume 2. The link is right at the top of the description on my website and on my Bandcamp. What this pack is for just $10, you get 5 really sick drum loops, which you can see have all been split into the individual sounds here. So really, you get a lot more than just 5 loops, but it's these 5 construction kits here, essentially. So you can hear just like a bunch of really solid drum loops in here with all the individual parts, so you can tear them apart and make your own loops out of them. You can take these and rearrange them into any number of new loops. Plus, I've also included a bunch of bonus kick loops as well, so you can see there's 10 of these in here, just like these nice hard-hitting distorted kicks like this. Which honestly, I think these are some of the best ones on the market for the style of techno. So if you guys enjoy these videos, definitely consider going to pick up the pack. It's just $10, but it really helps support me. Plus, you get a ton of really awesome loops that you're going to be able to take apart and really learn from. You can learn how to make the drums from scratch with these, because you can kind of use it as a template and say, okay, I'm going to use my own hi-hat here, I'm going to use my own kick, and you see like the amount of layers that you're going to have to it, essentially. And yeah, so link is at the top of the description. Thank you for the support, guys. I hope you enjoyed the pack, and let's dive in. Now, this project file I have in front of me here is actually drum loop 3 from the pack, so we're going to be breaking it down. And the first thing here is going to be making the hard techno kick. So this is the kick. Now the way this is working is it's pretty much like a standard techno kick, right? We have our kick, which this is one of mine that I've taken, and then I just took this one kick from it. And then we have the bass underneath. And then the thing with the bass is that it's going to be a little bit more detailed than like a more standard like 128 BPM style of techno track. Because with these style of tracks, I think a lot of what's happening really is in that kick and the bass and kind of the mid-range on top of that we're going to create with this. So you really want to think of this more like a percussion loop and not just the bass. But of course, the bass is very important, and the bass is the main point of it. So it's that same kick that you just saw, again, just that kick of mine that I took and sampled here. And then this was playing 16th notes, so we're getting that da-da-da-da-da. And then what's happening is we're low passing it a little bit inside of the sampler here. But then we have this audio effect track. So here's without this. And with it. So you can hear this adds a lot to the sound, and if I go and kind of chill out this low pass over here, you can hear. So yeah, this is adding a lot of movement to the sound. It's adding that mid-rangey kind of thing. Again, here's without it now. And then with it. It's really kind of turning this into its own percussion loop. And so the way this is working is through multiband distortion. I've shown you guys this technique recently before, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth here. So the idea with this is that we're creating movement with it, because what we're doing is, you can see each one of these 3 bands, the lows, mids, and then the highs are being distorted differently, of course. But then on the highs, we have this low pass filter, which has an 8th note LFO on it. So you can hear, it's also got that ramp down, so it's like don't, don't, don't. So without this, and with it. And yeah, so you can hear it adds that nice rhythm to that. But what it does also is it adds contrast, because we're hearing the mid-range and the lows going dun-dun-dun-dun, like that. So then you add this dun-dun-dun-dun on top of that. And you can hear it's adding a lot of depth and nuance there that you might not really notice right off the bat when you hear a track like this. But little things like this are going to make it just a lot more detailed and a lot more interesting. You can also do this on the mid-range, like we put that. So that's kind of a cool sound as well. But yeah, so I recommend you do this. Again, the kick is just going to be doing the on its own in the MIDI, and then you're just going to low pass that. But then adding this multi-band distortion with some filters that have LFOs on them for movement can really add a lot to the kick, and I think it's adding a lot of depth here. And also another important thing is you usually want to put the filter before the distortion, because if we put it after, you'll notice. See, you don't even hear it if we put it after, because what's happening is this high resonance here is going into that overdrive. And that's what's creating that kind of like crunchy sort of percussion loop that you're getting there. So that's important. You want to make sure you put the filter before the distortion. Then we just have a little bit of reverb. And the reason I'm using this here is you'll notice it's not 100% wet like you would typically do with a rumble. Now we're using a shorter reverb here like this, but it's just kind of blended in there. So here's without it. And then with it. Again, without it. And with it. So the purpose of this is really just to add some texture to the kick. You know, it kind of adds like a little bit more sound in there. And it also helps to obscure it as well, because obviously, like, okay, yeah, in theory we could just take the kick, just doing 16th notes, and then that would be fine, right? But it's just we're getting so much more movement and texture now by adding stuff like this. So that's really the purpose of the reverb here. It's not to be like a reverb rumble like you would classically think of, but instead it's just meant to add a little bit of kind of texture. And then this is just being sidechained to the kick. And the last thing here is, well, for one, we have this utility just converting everything to mono. Because if you have that reverb, you're gonna have to make sure that it's in mono by the end, because you don't want your bass to be stereo by any means whatsoever. But then we also have this EQ here, and this is cutting out some low frequencies that we wouldn't really hear that would mess up our mix. It's also boosting a little bit there. And then here you can kind of control wherever you want to put the low pass. Like, you can even do that if you wanted to, but see, I had it like this. But essentially we're just using that low pass to kind of dial out some of the highs. And just like that last thing to really set the kick wherever you want it to be. And then on the group there, that compressor, you can ignore it. Now I have this on here, I will explain a little bit. If you want to use a little bit of compression, I included this because compression can actually make your kick and bass kind of sound a little bit more glued. Like if I turn this on, you can see it's really subtle, but just making sure you turn up that attack so that it doesn't mess up the transients on the kick. And then just doing like really light compression like that. Like it's not doing too much there. Then we have these audio layers. Now obviously when you're making drums, you would think like, okay, let's get individual drum sounds and program those in MIDI. And we do have that. But obviously you can hear, if I play just the MIDI layers, you know, it's lacking a bit of texture, right? Like, it doesn't really have that same kind of fullness and that nice sound that you would get if you bring in audio. So you need to use some type of loops, some type of audio, like different sounds like this, that are going to give it that live feel. And also just lots of texture as well, like. So I have 3 different types of ones here. So the first one here is just these rolls. And so the way these are being made is, it's this percussion loop, which is actually one that I made. I'll show you the original. So that's just one of mine I made. It's from my Definitive Hard Rave Techno percussion loop sample pack, which I'll link at the top of the description as well. But what I've done here is I took it and I chopped it up. You can see I added this little fade, so it's like kind of fading in. I also pitched it down a bit, so it's a bit deeper. And then we have a low pass filter, which here's without that. And then with it, you can hear that's not really doing too much. It's just adding a little bit of like a lo-fi effect. We have a high pass filter as well, just to cut out the low end. And then I have this auto pan just to make it sound like it's bouncing off of the kick. And yes, you can hear that's adding, like, this almost sounds like the intro, right? You know, that's adding that, like, a very particular kind of live layer that you're just not going to get with programmed percussion. Like, I can sit there and I can take, like, you know, a bunch of individual percussion sounds and put them in the same place where they are in this loop. But it's just not going to be the same thing as, like, this live loop that's gone through generations of processing and resampling and all that kind of stuff. So it's important to use loops for stuff like that, but again, kind of like making your own thing with it, like you've seen here. And then these two here are kind of, honestly, in the same sort of world. Now the key with these is call and response, right? Like, either one of these on their own isn't really... Like, obviously that works, or that works. But when you have the... That's the idea here, right? Is that these two are kind of talking to each other. And this is how we can create groove in these style of tracks. And also, I think you can really take your drums to the next level. A lot of people think it's just about making the hard kick and getting, like, you know, the kind of loops or whatever. But there's really more to it than that. We need to have some things that are kind of talking to each other. And that's where these fit in. So, it's not that hard to do, right? Because all you have to do is just kind of imagine one as... Like, it's like that call and response. It comes very naturally, I think. So the way I made these ones is these are actually from that same pack that I showed you. It's just one of my sample packs. What I did is I took this and I reversed it, actually. I'll show you. Yeah, you can see I reversed that one. And then this one, it's just being distorted. Or it's just a distortion one going through a bit of a high pass filter. I've also got a bit of echo on this one. But yeah, again, these are pretty simple on their own. But see, like, now just with these two elements, like, this could be a whole breakdown on its own, right? So yeah, then after that we have this clap, which I wanted to show you guys how to make this style of claps like you hear in a lot of these tracks. Now the secret to this is essentially distorted reverb. What we're doing is we have this clap sample in here, and then we're distorting it once, it's going through a short reverb, and then it's being distorted again. And I'll show you what happens, like, if we just use one distortion. Like, you get, of course, like, that hard sound, but it's not quite the same, because when we distort the reverb, you get, like, kind of like these crunchy artifacts happening, and that's what we're going for. We're trying to create a nice texture with this one, so that works really well. And you'll notice also I have one and then reverb and then a distortion. We don't just have, like, both overdrives, because if we put both after the reverb, it's a little bit too much. What tends to happen then is, like, the reverb kind of blurs its way into the main sound. So I like to just have one distortion, reverb, and then another distortion. And you wouldn't even have to have two distortions. The thing with this is it's always going to depend on which clap you put into it. So maybe your clap might just need one, in which case you could just do one after the reverb. But I'm kind of thinking it as, like, these two layers, like the clap and then the overdrive, are essentially, that's the sound. And then this is just the extra effects on top of it. And then also the high pass filter on there just to make sure it's not going to mess up the lows. And then finally we just have the hi-hats, which is pretty straightforward, right? You know, it's mostly just going to be like 909 style sounds. Like this one is a 909 open hi-hat. And that's the closed hi-hat. You can see on this one I've kind of worked with the velocities a little bit, just to make it feel a little bit more, like, interesting, to add a little bit more nuance in there. And yeah, like I said, you know, it's pretty much going to be those sounds for the style, you know, because those sounds are, of course, like the classic techno sounds that are used a lot. You can layer them with different things, but I think the real key here is just keeping in mind, like, you don't just want to grab any old 909 samples. Like, try to find some that are really fat, really recorded well, maybe even already have some saturation on them or something like that, because if you just grab, like, you know, whatever random 909 hi-hat, there's a lot out there that are, like, little tiny, like, you know, you really need this, like, huge fat one. And even pitching it down a little bit can help too. Like, I did that here. You could even go, like, you know, and just really get that texture there and make it feel nice and aggressive. And yeah. So that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get definitive hard rave techno drum loops volume 2 along with the bonus kick loops. Link is right at the top of the description. It's just $10. This really helps me out and helps keep me going so I can keep bringing you guys new videos. Plus, you get a bunch of really awesome loops. You can take all these individual loops and work with them on their own and make a whole new track out of it. Plus, it just serves as a really nice template to work with and to kind of get an understanding of these drums. I'm trying to create products here that aren't just products to sell for me, but also things that can really help you guys out. So definitely check that out. Thank you for the support, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.